1. Just at the Jail's Head, Book 1, Bloodkin, by Kathy Ashford. Chapter 12. We made it back to the hall just in time for dinner, and afterwards I grabbed a candle and a holder from Mint Eve and set it up on my workbench. The couple of hours we had spent at the Thistle had left me relaxed and buoyant, and with my headache gone, I easily managed to light the candle 10 times in a row to Charlie's satisfaction. Each time he created one of his wee dowsing shields to catch the smoke, and he floated them over to the fireplace to release the smoke up the chimney. "Can't you just oven it so there's no smoke at all?" I asked him. "Oh, well, I suppose you could, but that'd be hard, and you'd probably end up with some sort of ashy residue. This is way easier." I felt triumphant, but weariness crept up on me like a leprechaun, and suddenly I was yawning widely and struggling to keep my eyes open. "Come on, Jazz, you've still got your readings to do." With a groan, I levered myself from my chair, and after checking in my journal, I went to the bookcase and pulled out the 2 volumes Mobility had prescribed. I think I'll go read these in bed if you don't mind, Charlie." "Of course, boyo. I'll wake you in the morning. Sleep well." He gave a friendly wave as I escaped to my room, rotating my globe to get some light. I had only just started on the 2nd volume, with a section on the leaving, when my eyes drooped and I laid the book down beside me. "I'll just rest my eyes a little bit," I thought, "then keep reading. Just for a second." But sleep had me in its overwhelming clutches, and soon I was dreaming of wood chips and magic, and a dangerous violet-eyed woman. Luckily for me, I already knew most of the basic history of the leaving that Mobility lectured on the next day. Its importance had been drummed into me by my tutors at home, as it was the beginning of the modern age in our current political and legal systems. My day had begun when an irritatingly bouncy Charlie had strode into my room and whisked back the curtains. The mentors had accompanied us to our 2nd day at the academy, which started, as promised, with meditation. Mobility had written the words Hyanya Nyomya on the board and had arranged the little floor seats in a rough circle in the area between our workbenches and the couches at the back. These seats were little more than cushions on the ground with a padded back support. Mobility indicated that we take a blanket from the pile, and we sat in a circle with crossed legs and covered our knees with the blankets. "Good morning, everyone. You will see that I have written the words Hyanya Nyomya on the board. Can you say that with me?" "Hyanya Nyomya," we chanted. "Good. This is what we call a mantra. Don't worry about the translation. There is no exact meaning, except perhaps it is a declaration of a peaceful heart or peaceful intentions. We use this mantra to help still our minds as we meditate. Now, you know the process, yes? It is a time for us to think about nothing. Yes, that's right. Nothing. We let go of the things that distract us, worry us, and we sit in peaceful nothingness. Now, rest your arms on your knees, like this, and curl your middle fingers up so that it touches your thumb. Good. Now, close your eyes and think about your breathing. Silently, as you breathe in, say Hyanya, then Nyomya as you breathe out. Very simple. Now, thoughts will come to you, and that is okay. Acknowledge them, then push them away. Think of nothing but your breathing and the mantra. Does everyone understand? Good. Let's begin. I curled my fingers together on my knees and closed my eyes. How hard could it be? I breathed in, thinking Hyanya in my head, then out, thinking Nyomya. In and out. Hyanya Onya. In and out. Unbidden, thoughts of Sella came into my head. Pretty blonde Sella, the upturned nose and a sweet mouth, and oh, bollocks, push it away. I tried to concentrate on the mantra to keep my mind clear, but images and snatches of conversation kept popping in. Acknowledge them and push them away, I thought. Hyanya Nyomya. The half hour stretched interminably. At one point, Donnet gave a little snore, then started awake. Well, Well, at least I hadn't fallen asleep. I had had maybe a minute at most of empty breathing in between mind wanderings. God, this meditation business was hard. Finally, Billy raised his hands and spoke quietly. So mote it be. We opened our eyes. It's difficult at first, I know, but like anything, practice does make perfect. I bet you all had screaming headaches after yesterday, yes? Well, this will help. Come, back to your desks. Billy stood from a seat with more grace than any 150-year-old should have, and returned to the front of the classroom. The rest of us Bloodkins struggled to our feet and wobbled over to our desks, readying pens and paper for the lecture. Billy lectured about the leaving for the rest of the morning as we scribbled furiously, giving us only a short break for coffee somewhere in the middle. He talked about how the young Queen Littlebitch, newly elected, and the taint that had begun to devastate the underground waterways, causing widespread illness in the enclaves. We learned about the refugees that started arriving from villages near the surface, bloodied and weary after groups of humans had broken into the tunnel system and attempted to massacre the Niathi populations. Queen Littlebitch had struggled valiantly to convince the enclaves that something had to be done, and with the help of her advisors she organised scouting parties from each of the enclaves to go outside to investigate the human activity that threatened the Niathi. Billy described the horrors that greeted the scouts out in the human world. What was now one country was then a number of smaller ones, mired in sectarian violence. Priests and mullahs and power-hungry princes and presidents were ravaging the land. The industry of war was pumping pollution into the lakes and rivers that had seeped down and poisoned the water. Horrified by the report she received, Queen Littlebitch gathered her supporters, who enlisted regiments of Niathi, and in a concerted effort these armies opened the tunnels and went outside to confront the warring humans. The humans reacted, predictably, with terror, as the Niathi bore down on them, not using weapons, but Hyavan to disarm and subdue fighters. The regiments swept through the countries from tunnel entrances in the north, south, and east, as the humans fled west, away from these nightmare invaders from the deep, with their red eyes and magic, to meet in the giant port of Alion, the seat of the most voracious of the city princes. Warring factions of human refugees reached an uneasy truce, but religious leaders began to preach about the end of the world, apocalypse, that the Niathi were vampires or demons of hell, unleashed by the wickedness of their traditional enemies. Regiments of the three enclaves met outside Alion as the riots started and the city began to burn. Queen Littlebitch ordered her troops to quell the violence and put out the fires, and with one great push the regiments cleared the city walls. In the confusion of the fighting, however, the Queen was captured by a group of humans and taken to the prince, who shaved her head like a slave and paraded her from the walls of his palace. His high priest, insane with fear, wanted to prove that the Niathi were immortal demons, fallen angels, who had followed an evil god named Satan to hell, to rally the rioting humans into fighting the invaders for the glory of God, so they would achieve their places in an afterlife called heaven. He convinced the prince to conduct a public beheading of the Queen on the steps of the palace, in full view of the crowds of humans that had gathered below. Billy, Talgoth waved his hand around, why didn't she just stop them? You know, with, like, Hyavan and stuff. Ah, yes, good question, Talgoth. Now, she could have, of course, created a shield or escaped or called for aid from the regiments who were just arriving. But she didn't, which is why we revere her memory to this very day. Queen Littlebitch realized that the humans needed to understand that the Niathi were not immortal demons. Longer lived than humans, yes, but not creatures of Satan that could not be killed. So she made the ultimate sacrifice, her life. She gave a speech to the crowd before she was led to the block, a speech my tutors had made me learn by heart. She spoke of the Niathi, the enclaves, Hyavan, which wasn't really magic, and her desire for nothing but peace for both races. As she was led to her death, she called out the ancient Niathi words of ending and acceptance, so mote it be, and then was beheaded on the steps of the palace in front of a huge crowd of humans in Neathi. The prince and high priest, upon seeing her blood, just as red as theirs, spill onto the stones with no release of demonic spirit, realized they had made a terrible mistake and fell to their knees weeping. The rest of the human crowd, their emotions reinforced with Hjaven from the grieving regiments, followed suit. Queen Lilbetch's advisor, a wise and ancient Neathi gentleman, had picked his way through the tearful crowds and climbed the steps to the palace, where he proclaimed a new republic for all the people of the land, and an eternal peace in the memory of their courageous queen. The rest, as they say, is history. Talgoth waved his hand again. Billy, could the people understand what they were saying? Another good question, Talgoth. Queen Lilbetch's scouts had reported that the humans spoke a language quite different to the Neathi. It had taken the regiments almost a full year between the leaving and the final events at Alion. During that time, the Queen had made every effort to learn this strange language. Not all humans had fled west, of course. Some more open-minded individuals had listened to the Neathi as they met and were swayed by their messages of a non-religious future of peace and democracy. Many of these turned out to be Neathi bloods, like yourselves. Their ability to use Hjaven a pleasant surprise to the Queen and the regiments that detected them. One of these, a girl named Halithia, not much older than yourselves at the time, became a particular friend of the Queen, and indeed later became the first human queen to be elected when order was restored and voting was held. I knew all about Halithia, of course. She'd been a jail's head girl, and we were particularly proud of the district's contribution to the foundation of the country. She was the one who commanded the establishment of the academies and provided for the proper education of the Neathi bloods. Of course, I'm sure this will all be common knowledge for most of you. Billy waggled his eyebrows at the class. You will be receiving more nuanced lessons on the leaving, and indeed on pre-leaving society from our friends in the history department later on in your course. But I think that is enough talk for one morning, yes? Tomorrow we will be looking more closely at these new systems the Neathi instituted. Billy wrote some names on the board, followed by Chatno numbers as our required readings for the night. Now, I'm sure you all practiced with your candles last night. Good. Well, this afternoon we will begin learning about Shiel, in the form of oxygen-proof shields, the type used to douse fires. See you after lunch. Back in the classroom later on, the journeyman had cleared away our meditation seats and placed candles and holders on our workbenches. Billy had written the words Shiel and Thwail on the board, and he waited for us all to take our stools before speaking. These are the Neathi words for what we are learning about today. He tapped the first word. Shiel is a general word to describe a change in the air brought about with Hjaven. Can you say that with me? Shiel, we attempted, and Billy jerked his head in satisfaction. Now this, he pointed to the second word, is Thlau, the specific type of Shiel commonly used to douse fires. Say that with me, please. Thlau. Good. Now, take care with the cadences, though. Throw is quite a different thing altogether. Throw is an oxygen-proof air shield, but the word can be more literally translated as the slowing down, which should give you an idea, something of an idea of how we create them. Now, if you'll all be so kind as to light your candles, your mentors will create this flow around the flame for you. I want you to study the quality of the air when they have done so. Go on, try that now. I concentrated on my candle and soon it was burning happily. Charlie blinked at the candle and it guttered and went out, and as the smoke collected I could see that he had created a circular shield around the tip of the candle. I looked into the air Charlie had constructed the shield out of, and I saw at once what Billy meant. The air particles, instead of floating around freely, had slowed and pulled in together, creating what felt like a solid barrier. Charlie looked at me expectantly, and as I nodded, he released the throttle. I watched the atoms begin to move normally again and drift apart, and the smoke began to float towards the window. How hard can it be? Charlie laughed. Go on then, give it a try. I lit the candle again, then tried to concentrate on the air around the little flame. I pulled some Hjavan out and felt about in the air, willing the atoms to slow. They obeyed for a second, pulling together before breaking apart and spinning away. Yeah, see, that's the idea. Keep concentrating and force them together. Keep trying, Charlie encouraged as my candle still burned brightly. I tried again, forcing the air to slow and gather, but I could only manage to hold it for a second before the particles dissipated. By the mid-afternoon break, I had only managed to pull any amount of air together for a few seconds, and not in the full spherical shield I would need to totally choke the flame of oxygen. Lalitha had managed to douse her flames twice and was looking rather pleased with herself, but everyone else seemed dispirited. Many of the other Bloodkin were rubbing at their temples as concentration-induced headaches began to rear. This is a much more difficult use of Hjavan than the wire we were doing yesterday, Merbilly told us kindly, smiling down at our despondent faces. It does take an awful lot of practice at the start, so please be patient. By the end of the day, I had a splitting headache and had come no closer to putting out my candle. Once I had managed to encircle the flames with my shield, but it slipped from my control before the lack of oxygen could douse the flame, and when Merbilly finally let us go, I was feeling thoroughly defeated. Back in my room, I threw myself into an armchair and cradled my fragile cranium in my hands. Charlie, I think I'm dying. How much longer does this go on for? He laughed quietly. Only a couple of weeks. You'll get used to the concentration soon, I promise. Come on, shall we go have some white on the roof? Oh, sweet Lord, yes, please, I croaked, and he laughed again and led me up to the top floor. Talgoth and Lalitha had beaten us to it. Lalitha had already borrowed Jimmy's pipe and filled it with the white moss, and now she was struggling with a sparklight. Oh, Charlie, you're here. Good. Would you be a dear and light this for us? Charlie and I squeezed onto the empty seats. When Charlie sparked the pipe, we three Bloodkin passed it around. It was another glorious late summer afternoon. We could see straight down over the wind-ruffled lake that glinted like chainmail. Down past the quarter, the last of the fishing boats were unloading their catches at the dock. We were all too weary to talk much, but Charlie tried his best to jolly us along, asking the others about their impressions of the academy. Well, it's all right for you, Lolly. You got the thrilled to work, Talgoth complained as Jimmy appeared from the door. Ugh, call me Lisa, would you? I hate Lolly. I'm not some sort of conviction. Jimmy had come to stand behind her and ruffled her hair. But you are my darling, a sweet little confection. Oh, sod off, Jimmy. She waved him away, but a pleased little smile tickled one corner of her mouth. He really was the perfect mentor for her, I realised, full of joy and generous with compliments. Even in the few days I had known her, she had lost some of the impenetrable, bitter defensiveness that I had noticed when I first arrived at the hall. Then, of course, I got to wondering if my time with Charlie would alter me so much. I doubted whether Talgoth would ever stop being trouble, but Thomas was so mature and reliable that I was sure some of that would rub off on him. Eventually. Hopefully. Are you kids feeling better yet? Charlie asked us, looking around. I did actually feel better. Talgoth had stopped rubbing his head and Lalitha had had some colour back in her cheeks. Come on then. If you go do your readings now, I've got a pack of cards and we can play some games after dinner. So we all got up and followed Jimmy through the door and down to our rooms to get started on our homework. End of chapter 12 and end of part 1. Oh yeah! Awesome. So, end of part 1.